Welcome to Bloomington North Rotary. I'm glad everybody can join us today on February 25th, 2021. We are still meeting virtual due to our lovely pandemic. And we have a few announcements for the club today. First of which is we have a district-wide Friends of the Foundation celebration tomorrow night at 6:30. If you're interested in attending, it's going to be free and virtual. And you are certainly welcome to attend. If you'd like to do that, go ahead and type something into the chat for me and I will get you signed up. And then also, if you were close on your Paul Harris points, I've sent you out an email last week that told you how close you were, and they're going to be doing a match at that event. And I think shortly thereafter that you could actually make a donation and we would match it to bring you up. Go ahead, Jody, with your question.
Well, is there capability for like credit card payment tomorrow night?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I'm going to say yes, and I have no idea, but I'm going to go with yes. If not, we'll make it work. Yes, Vic.
Do I write a check out to, can I write a check out to the club for my dues plus the match? And,
yes, you can do it through your dues.
Take care of it that way. All right.
Yep. Yep, we'll take care of it for you if you just tell us that, which you already emailed me, Vic. So yeah, we'll take care of that for you. And let's see, other events coming up. We are in the process of planning. We have not set a date yet. We're going to be doing a virtual wine event sometime in mid to late April. We do have a committee slowly being formed for that. So looking forward to having that. We'll give you more details on that next week. And I believe that is all the announcements that I have. So Joe, if you'd like to unmute yourself, I'll ask everybody else to mute yourself. But if Joe, you'd like to unmute and introduce our speaker, take it away.
Yeah, so our speaker today is from Bloomington Refugee Support Network, although I think we're actually just going to Refugee Support Network. I'm on the board, so Pete can correct me if I'm wrong. Pete is our speaker, Pete Lanson. His background is vast, but for our purposes, we're just dealing with his work at the Refugee Support Network, where he's been a long-time board member, acting executive director for a while, and he still does a lot of the hands-on. He's going to explain what we do at Bloomington Refugee Support Network and some of the clients or individuals we deal with. These are largely foreign nationals who are in the midst of a lot of trouble and they need some help, and Pete's the one that gives that to them, and he's going to talk about that today. And I'm sure Pete can probably add some more personal detail about his background or his life if he wants to.
Okay, everyone can see the screen here?
We see
Okay,
you.
wonderful. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm retired military, worked in industry, running factories that made plastic packaging for a long time, lived overseas for a while, but refugees is something that is really close to my heart. So I'm very happy to talk a little bit about that here. We're going to talk about our organization and then give a little bit of history on asylum seekers, which is what we particularly do here. So I can figure out how to advance the slides here. We'll be in good shape. So we're a nonprofit, 501c3. We're a volunteer network. Members are from different faith groups, government offices. We have a larger community of people that support us at different levels. Our mission is with our community partners to help asylum seekers and refugees and others get a fresh start in life. Many of them have fled their country because of violence, wars, etc., and we help them get a new start to raise their children in peace. In the past year, we've supported 30 families, including Venezuelan, some Africans, ethnic Turkish people from China called Uyghurs and Kazakhs is a new category that's getting pretty big and getting a lot of visibility recently. When clients come, they've fled violence in their home country and many of them are traumatized. They learn about us many times from friends. They contact our volunteers and my role is I'm the operations person, so I handle the finances and I'm the primary contact with the clients. I've met all of them personally and their families. What do they need? Help with living expenses, the way the system works, you file an asylum application with the government, and it used to be after 8 weeks, you would get a work permit. Well, now, this is, after the last several years, it's been drug out to where now you have to wait a year. So how do you work and support your family during that period of time? It's a very challenging period. It's very unfortunate. They don't want charity. They want to work. Many of them have skills that they have valid. They want to regain their certifications. We have members, clients that were nurses, physicians, engineers. They run factories, skilled, different people and skilled artisans. But they have to come here, improve their English skills, and then regain their certificates. And so they go to Ivy Tech, take a course to be a nurse, take some more classes and get their state certificate. So it's a great success story. Some other things as to how we can help them. Teach them how the bus system works. We've donated bicycles, helped them study for driver's license. I think you can take a driver's license in, 12 different languages now. But one of the more interesting things is help them to be a good driver. Driving, and sometimes that gets kind of exciting. We take them to local resource agencies, Macam, Opportunity House, places like that. We do have some funds, and we can help with rent and utility bills until they get their work authorization. We help them with attorney fees and application fees. Sometimes we drive them to Chicago for their immigration judge hearing. I've done that personally 3 times for Uyghurs, these Turkish ancestry people from Western China. Another attorney in town just came back last night from one of our clients had his hearing at an immigration judge in Chicago yesterday. We work with the 2 federally certified refugee resettlement agencies in Indiana. That would be Catholic Charity and Exodus. And I work with several churches to do winter clothing drives. We write letters to the editor, and Bloom Magazine has done some wonderful articles for us. The pandemic has placed great hardship on many of our clients, as is true for many of us in our community. Many of our clients are having to start over. They may have been an engineer or worked as a physician before or an engineer, but they have to start over. So they're working cleaning houses. They're working in restaurants. Well, now with the pandemic, their hours are shut down and they're all out of work. Some of them claim as, hey, 2 people live together, share an apartment, but their roommate couldn't hack it, because of the financial strains. They're going back to Alabama to stay with their mother or something like that. So now they're in even greater position of difficulty. Most of them don't have adequate health insurance. That's a real challenge, so we work with that. Bloomington and Monroe County is a very generous area. So the Refugee Network has gotten grants from several organizations. Most of you are familiar with that. United Way has their COVID grants. We've participated in 3 series of those. Sophia Travis, Jeff Hawkins is another source of grants that we've used. What have we done with our grants? Here's a busy slide. Don't run for the Jack Daniels yet. But what this chart shows you is on the left side is the countries our families come through. Each line is a client family, not an individual. We have very few individuals. Most of them are like a single mother and a son, a single mother and 2 boys or something like that. So you can see the list of countries that these people come from. And across the top is the different categories. And I apologize, this is way too many details. If you go to the bottom right, 33,000 is what we spent last year. That does include about $1,000 for some grant writing. We had a young lady, a graduate student, that supported us in some grant writing, and so I paid her $1,000. So last year we spent about $33,000. I'm trying to keep an eye to see if I see any signs of questions or anything, but here's an overview of our client families. Active in my book is someone that we've financially supported in the last 6 months. And so you can see the countries that they come from there. Inactive means we've provided support in the last couple of years. Give you time to review that a little bit. You can see from China, you know, there's 4 families from China. These aren't ethnically Han Chinese. These are Turkish ancestry people, look like you and I. You know, they do not have Asian features, but because they're Muslim, they are persecuted by the government. They got this nasty habit of wanting to go to temple. They want to teach their kids about Islam. And so the government, China's government, takes a very dim view of that and persecutes them for that. There's over 1 million Uyghurs in forced labor camps. The life expectancy for going in a forced labor camp in Western China is 6 months. If you don't get out in 6 months, you probably never will. It's horrible statistics. This is just now getting some publicity in the mainstream press about this, which is a wonderful thing. Joe has experience, you know, he has people that he could tell stories about that as well. Some other things we've done. HealthNet is a wonderful local organization. They're a successor to the Volunteers in Medicine. Some of you may have heard of. So we assist clients to go there and qualify for emergency Medicaid. That doesn't cover doctor's visits. It only covers emergency, basically emergency room visits. But they have Spanish-speaking staff. I think in the last several months, I meet 6 clients there. We'll go there. I'll introduce them and, you know, reassure them, you know, and then I just kind of walk away and they fill out the forms, sign up for emergency Medicaid if they need, and then they get referrals. Do you have impacted wisdom teeth? Do your cataracts are bad? Whatever the issue, they can send you to different places. They do have some physicians that come in and do dentist work twice a week, but they have relationships with other groups. It isn't free, but they have a income staggered pay structure that's very beneficial to us. We have supported a couple of clients that needed emergency surgery, and this is a very difficult situation. 2 different times, someone came to us and says, "Hey, I need emergency gallbladder. My mother is, you know, it really needs this. She says that if he doesn't get it within 2 months, she's going to die. But they say we have to pay $6,000 up front. Otherwise, they're not going to do the surgery." So, I mean, I really struggle with that. I mean, this is I didn't think that was legal for a public hospital to do that. But I'm not a lawyer on this. But so anyway, we work with other nonprofits, and HealthNet is a wonderful advocate. I work very closely with the folks over there, and sometimes they can waive it, but a couple of times, you know, we put in $500 to help them get their surgery. And one of the ladies is a 50-year-old woman, is now back to work. IU does have a financial assistance application form in a couple languages. We help them with that. We haven't had a really good luck with people getting cataract surgery. There is a nonprofit, but you have to be a citizen to participate in that. We've already looked at that. Furniture, this is a wonderful program. Most of you, I'm sure, have heard of St. Vincent de Paul. They provide some financial benefits, but they have a wonderful furniture warehouse, and they'll pick up furniture from your house. Several churches, faith communities support them. On Saturdays, they have volunteers come in and help load up the furniture. So they have an online application form. So several clients have said, "Hey, I need help with this. I'm not really good in English, so I'll help them fill it out." The technology is amazing. I will text to them and say, "Hey, I need your date of birth, the number of kids in your house, the ages, things like that." They'll receive that text, translate it into their language, respond back in their language, and translate it back to me. I mean, it's an amazing system. So the technology, so we're able to fill this out, and then they meet the truck on Saturday. Most of the people that work at St. Vincent de Paul on Saturdays are my age, older folks, very COVID concerned. And so They only deliver the furniture to the street. They can't go inside the apartments. So that's a wonderful agency in Bloomington. We work closely with El Centro. They're a much bigger organization. They do a lot of different things, a lot of education things. Their office is in the library there. We do a lot of support with different groups, faith communities. We try to send out weekly emails to tell our clients, but also our supporters. We have about 100 people that call themselves supporters, and they've helped in different ways. And so we try to tell them about, here's some job opportunities. Here's a factory that's making medical devices that needs people, you know, and here's where you can get COVID testing. You know, here's information on HealthNet, nonprofit things. The changes in immigration procedures, I don't do a lot of that now because it changes so often. Every week is a new change, it seems like. So let's see, what else is next here? These are some additional things that we need support for. Okay, this is a video. Sylvie McNair is on our board. Some of you know her, you know, a world famous opera singer, and she is on our board and a wonderful supporter. She's supports not just us, but she's very active in Shalom, now called Beacon, and other nonprofits. And so I work with her, and she did this wonderful little video clip to help publicize our needs that we've given to a couple of different faith communities. So it's like 2 minutes. Can you hear it?
No,
can't hear it?
you're going to need to reshare your screen, and make sure when you share it, check the boxes that say share audio.
Okay.
So you should see when you're selecting which screen you want to share at the bottom, there's 2 little check boxes. There you go.
Right. Try this again here.
Good morning. I'm Sylvia McNair, and I'm representing the Bloomington
Is that better?
Refugee Support Network. Last year, we helped 30 families. This year, we have requests from 50. Many are seeking asylum, fleeing religious persecution, sexual violence, and political turmoil that put them in danger of losing their lives. So they made the unimaginable decision to run for safety. When they find us, they have little more than what they carried, but they want to work. They want to be self-sufficient and restart their lives. The Refugee Support Network offers help with basic human needs like comfort, shelter, food, and friendship. We're a 100% volunteer organization, so we hope you'll join us as a partner in this inclusive and heart-opening work. I close with a portion of a poem by Warsan Shire. No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. I want to go home, but home is the barrel of a gun. No one would leave home unless home chased you to the shore, unless home tells you to leave. You have to understand, no one puts their children in a boat unless the water is safer than the land. Thank you for your generous consideration.
Okay. I have a couple of slides to talk about asylum seekers. Do we still have a little bit of time, another 5 minutes to go through this?
Go ahead.
Brian, okay. So this is all part of humanitarian immigration. Every year, just as an overview, we accept about 1 million legal immigrants every year. The US's population is 330. Well, so this is green cards, people that are on the road to naturalization, on the road to citizenship. 70% are sponsored by family members. That's the way our immigration system is set up. 14% are from job skills. This is an area that Joe is that's his specialty. The 10% down here is refugees from political organizations. That's what I'm talking about. There's another really small area, diversity visa, a lottery thing, which is kind of a new thing. Who are refugees and asylum seekers? They fled war, conflict, and cross an international border to find safety. This is set up by international law from 1951, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. And their criteria is a well-founded fear of persecution because of your race, your religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a social group. Asylees are very, very similar, except they're applying for asylum after they arrived in the United States. Now that's changed a little bit in the last 4 years, but that was the original intention. Where do refugees come from? You've probably seen this before, a lot from Syria. The war there has created a tremendous number of them. Afghanistan, an area after 20 years we're still trying to get out of. Yemen Crisis, this is Burma, and now called Myanmar. We'll talk about that. And Africa has had a series of very difficult issues. Myanmar is an area where we've seen a lot of publicity recently. The military did a coup d'etat and put in prison Aung San Suu Kyi, the civilian leader. Since the 70s, there's been a lot of persecution there, and over 1 million Rohingya Muslims, which is the minority group in the country, have fled. Where do they go? Many different countries. There's a bunch that are inside the state there, but what's going on there? Well, you look over here, it's a ethnic, but it's a nationalism issue. The Buddhist leaders, they're in charge, and these Buddhists, they're not just the monks that sit in the temple and chant. These are the political leaders, the military leaders. They are the predominant group, ethnic group in the country. They have their idea on how things should be run. Well, the Muslims feel that they're not getting their fair share of the economic, of business opportunities, education, and so they're complaining. Well, the Buddhists take a pretty small view of that, and so they've driven them out of the country. There's been a lot of them have been killed. It's a very difficult thing. Syrian refugees, I think everybody has seen this. There's almost 5 million Syrian refugees that have fled. Turkey has over half of them. Lebanon has it. This statistic is staggering. 1 in 5 people in Lebanon is a Syrian refugee. Now they're similar ethnically, but still that's a staggering statistic. The Yemen crisis, we've heard about that. This is the worst humanitarian crisis in the world, but it's not a refugee crisis because most people have stayed there. I just wanted to point that out. Okay, let's look at the US briefly. Refugee resettlement in the US has changed a lot. This is a very complicated chart. Let me explain it. The blue is refugees resettled in the US from Europe, and you can see how that has changed over the years. The tan is Asia. That's been a pretty big group. And the light tan is Africa. That's more recently, particularly with people from the Congo and things like that. So what are these bullets? Well, 1975, Saigon fell. Communist North Vietnam took over, and there was a lot of refugees. I was in the Navy at that time, and I was personally involved in picking up boat people, bringing them into port. It was interesting. President Jimmy Carter was the president, and he tasked the U.S. Navy to spend extra time loitering in the South China Sea, looking for boat people. Well, the places that accept refugees, just like with Syria now, we're overwhelmed. We're talking Thailand, Singapore, Philippines, Malaysia. They're overwhelmed. They don't want any more refugees coming in, no more boat people. So he also worked, so President Carter worked with the State Department and said, if the US Navy brings boat people in, we will pay for them and we will facilitate their immigration to the country of their choice. So they accepted them. It was a wonderful policy, and most of them went to Australia, New Zealand, some to Europe, some to Canada, some to the United States. 1980, there was a law that changed quotas for refugees. 1989, we decided to increase more Soviet refugees. 1999, you all remember the Kosovo conflict. You know, there was a tremendous slaughter of people in there. So we got refugees in from that area. There was a peak in 2004, Somalia and Laos. The Burmese thing that we talked about from the Rakhine crisis really saw it in 2007. And this is where the refugee ceiling dropped off. Historically, the average across the years has been about 95,000. Here's some trends. Look at the last 5 years. US total. These are the number of refugees that we have resettled. Again, refugees, these are legal, very high level of security vetting. Some people have compared the vetting for legal refugees as equivalent to the vetting that a military officer receives before he gets a security clearance in terms of the number of details of steps involved, the number of government agencies.
Pete, I have a question.
Officer. Yes.
Why did Indiana's, excuse me, why have Indiana's numbers gone down so significantly from 2016?
Well, this was a change in administration. The president.
Oh, yes, it was.
I mean, much of immigration is from legislation. The one thing the president has control over is refugee resettlement. And so every year they have to establish, they're supposed to do it in consulting with Congress, but they can decide. And so here, Obama's ceiling was a 110, and then Trump immediately dropped it to 45, then to 30, and then in 2020 he dropped it to 18,000. 2021 it dropped to 15,000. This is the lowest target, which is a goal for refugee resettlement in over 40 years. So does that answer your question? The Indiana numbers just mirror the US. There are 9 agencies that are certified by the State Department to process refugee resettlements. Refugees in camps all over the world, and not just in camps, but in big cities. They apply to UNHCR. They want to be a refugee. They can't pick what country they go to, but the US picks about 1% of those eligible. We're very picky. But if you only have so many that you can bring in, then you have to cut it way down. Where do these people in Indiana, where do they come from? Well, I got a couple of slides here, we can show it. Here's Exodus in 2019. Exodus in Indianapolis brought in 394 refugees. A lot of them from Burma. We talked about the conflict there, but from a lot of different places as well. A lot in Africa, Afghanistan, Syria. So 394 in 2019, half of that in 2020. Again, Burmese was the biggest part, followed by the Congo. Catholic Charities is another big player. 2019, they sponsored 273, a lot from Burma, a lot from Africa. That went down to 82 in Burma. Here's a very interesting statistic. Everyone thinks that, our immigrants are primarily from Latin America. Well, since about 2008, that's not true at all. Asians, immigrants are now outpacing Hispanics. Very interesting number. This is an intriguing chart that I was astonished by. This is what commonly spoken language in each state, other than English and Spanish. So here's Indiana, Pennsylvania Dutch. Well, I guess that kind of makes sense. We have a lot of Amish ancestry people in the South and in the North. I'm from Western Nebraska, right on the Colorado border. I had no idea about the biggest language. There's a lot of Vietnamese people there. Texas and Oklahoma is the same. Tagalog is a language spoken in the Philippines. I think we all understand Haitians in Florida. Very intriguing. One of the things that people think about, well, are these people that come, these refugees, are they able to work? Can they participate in democracy? Can they succeed? Well, this chart shows that recently arrived immigrants have a significantly higher percentage of a bachelor's degree, 45%. This is a 2019 study. significantly more than people that are US born and people that have been here before. Where are all the immigrants? They're all over the place. But a lot of them are in big cities. Okay, no surprise there. One of the reasons that this affects all of us, and I realize I'm running out of time here. I just want to talk about a couple things. Falling birth rates in the United States. This is kind of an ominous thing. I spent 20 years after I left active duty in the military running factories that made plastic packaging for food packaging. It's kind of a high-tech industry. I've done that in 6 different states. And in every state, I had difficulty getting workers that had the educational skills to where they could work. When I take visitors up to Exodus or Catholic Charities, one of the places I always want to introduce to them are the vocational counselors. These people have such a wonderful story to tell. They say, I can't get enough refugees placed. These companies in Indianapolis, they want refugees. Why do they want refugees? They show up for work on time. They don't use drugs. They are not interested in sticking around at being entry level. They want to come up, they want to run the damn company at some point. They want to grow. You know, they are very motivated. I'm not trash talking people in Indiana. All I'm saying is that the companies I have seen have a shortage of these high skilled workers. We all have heard from the news accounts about low-wage workers, people that are coming in trying to harvest food and things like that. We struggle with that. That's one of the issues that Joe is more familiar with than I am about this. You know, the food workers, the farm workers, the visa program for that is horrible. Anyway, back to babies. The number of babies born fell to a 32-year low. Well, who's putting that out? Some kind of liberal rag? No, the Wall Street Journal, 2019. The fertility rate, number of births per 1,000 women in that primary childbearing age, fell the lowest since the start of federal record keeping. That doesn't sound good. Teen birth rates are down. Well, I think most people would say, well, that's probably not a bad thing because teen mothers are going to struggle more than women in their 20s in terms of having the skills, the experience, and the financial wherewithal to raise kids. We're not the only country struggling with this. Europe, Scandinavia, Japan, Korea, they all have bigger problems with this than we are. Here's an interesting statistic. 2018, percentage of women giving birth was higher among immigrants than above the US by Pew Research. One of the things that we've seen in the last 100 years is that immigration, the higher childbirth rate with immigration has been a very stabilizing force with population. Here's an interesting slide. It shows the total number of births. Now, it's not per million or anything, so it's kind of a crazy slide, but it does have some interesting things. This thing circled, at the end of World War II, we had a big national program to welcome back the GIs, and you can tell that worked out quite well for us. Here's a couple of data points that there's been a lot of articles written. Did it really impact it? Use of birth control pills was become popular. Maybe that contributed to that decline in births. Legalize abortion doesn't seem to have been influenced. But anyway, this drop in birth rate is problematic. This isn't going to be a surprise to you, but here's the younger age groups. Those are all declining in the last 20 years. This shows 50 to 1918, but in the last 20 years, those are declining. The only ones that are increasing is women in the older periods of time. Those are holding steady and slightly increasing. So I'm going to close on this slide here and see if you have questions. This is part of a larger presentation that I give to other civic groups and to churches on immigration. I can go into a lot more details on asylum seekers and show statistics and how many are passing the courts and things like that. But I just want to close. This issue affects all of us. Some communities are thriving with large populations. but others question whether their communities can assimilate that. I go back to a farm in western Nebraska. It's where I grew up, but now the farm is struggling, and I have two brothers there that are running it. And they have no immigrants there. They have no Asians. No, they have one person that's a Hispanic family that runs a Mexican restaurant. A lot of those people are scared to death of these migrant coming in. They're going to put tents in their backyard. I mean, it's because they don't have the data. They don't have the life experience. So anyway, I'm going to close the presentation here. If I can get to the stop screen thing. There are several different, okay, you did. There's a couple of interesting studies that I'd be happy to participate with you in later meetings to talk about. I'm not doing this to evangelize. I'm doing this to learn. But these studies are talking about, here's some proposed solutions to this immigration crisis. One is the George Bush Presidential Library they've done a lot of work on this, and they have a very specific series of steps that are very interesting to walk through. Cato Institute has another series of steps. I think there's, how many bills in US Congress, give me a number, how many bills in US Congress have been submitted by individual legislators in the last 5 years? Any ideas?
10,000.
53. So a lot of congressmen, senators and congressmen, they know this is a problem. They've done some diligence, they've done some hard work, and they submit the bills. How many of those have gotten hearings? Why is that? This issue has gotten so politicized, unfortunately. It used to be the Republicans, liked immigration more than the Democrats in the Reagan area and the Bush area, because immigration built jobs. They paid taxpayers. The more taxpayers we can get, the better. It strengthened the economy. But now in the last few years, immigration has been demonized. And a lot of people think immigration is all bad. Well, that's overly simplified. But anyway, so I'll stop, get off my soapbox here. Does any other questions before I go back and have my lunch? Or
Yeah, Jody had to leave, so she said thank you for everything. And if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll be happy to let you unmute and ask. So what is Bloomington's plan? How many refugees does Bloomington want to have? How many have we had in the past, and how many are we looking to have in the next year or two?
Okay, Bloomington was initially slated to receive refugees through Exodus. But when the presidential decree dramatically slashed the number of refugees that were coming in, remember the slide that it went from 100 to 30 to 18 to 15? The Refugee Resettlement Agency says, hey, we can't even support our staff. So that completely stopped any plans on Bloomington being a refugee resettlement agency. That's the period of time that Refugee Support Agency in Bloomington, we started. We were hoping to do that. We were planning to do that. We are very hopeful that maybe by the end of this year, maybe next year, Exodus and Catholic Services in Indianapolis will start to get more refugees in. They will staff up to support it, and then they'll start working with us to where we can prepare for that. The numbers, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's, I think maybe if you're interested for another meeting, we can talk about security vetting for refugees.
Well,
What kind of financial assistance do they get? Are they really going to be carrying their own weight? There's lots of good discussions about that we'd be happy to participate in, but I realize now I'm on borrowed time here.
Well, before when we were at 180,000 or 90,000 refugees coming in, what was the hope that you were hoping for Bloomington?
There were several different numbers. 20 families, some people had said. You know,
Okay.
I mean, we're not talking thousands of people, you know.
No, that's 100 people right there. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, but that would not be all at once. That would be maybe over an 18-month period of time, you know, very slow, you know, but we're a ways away from that. You know, one of the things that other countries do, the US used to do, was faith communities were much more involved. Canada still does that today. A church or two churches get together and say, hey, we want to sponsor a refugee family. And we will commit to support them for a year or two. And there's a little bit of financial with that, but mainly it's not financial. Mainly it's logistics, helping them find an apartment, helping them find jobs, helping with the kids get into school, helping them with clothing. Most of it was donated. That's been very successful in Canada. Canada right now resettles 12 times the number of refugees per capita than we do. The US used to lead the world in refugee resettlement, but we're not anymore. But Canada, you would think they're similar to us, aren't they? Kind of a similar colonial resettlement background, but they're kind of a different country, and they are very strong on accepting refugees. Yeah, they like to the people in Ontario like to yell at the people in Quebec. They have their little things going on there, but they're very strong on resettling refugees. But that's one of the things that I hope we can change to where we can have a greater role for churches and communities and nonprofits and say, hey, we want to do a small thing in our community. We'd like to sponsor one family, a mother and two kids. We will help them get a fresh start in our life. We can't do that now. You know, legally, we can't do that.
Other questions for Pete? Go ahead, Jean.
You're on mute. Okay.
Do you see any role for Rotary clubs to assist in increasing the numbers of people that we can bring into our communities? We are an international organization.
Yes. I think the biggest thing is advocacy. You know, a lot of our legislators know this is an issue, but they hear from their constituents that listen to social media and say, whoa, we got to slow this immigration down. We're going to lose our way of life. And so I think there's something to be said for having more meetings about this. You know, and I didn't present slides that talk about it, but there's lots of studies that show that refugees coming are doing better than the average citizen in terms of contributing to the economy. The DACA is a program. You know, there's 600,000 young people came as kids. They're kind of stranded. A lot of them are nurses, physicians. You know, these are people, very successful people. They just can't become citizens right now. And there's always this threat of deportation over there because of this situation. You know, I think advocacy, to answer your question, somehow we need to make it acceptable for people to talk about immigration and to think about what are some ways to resolve it. A lot of people say, well, why don't they just go get in line? In some cases, there isn't a line. Here's an example that I've helped a little bit. Here's a woman that came on a school visa. She was a student, then a graduate student. Then she had to start working to pay the tuition. Then she had married and had kids. All of a sudden, she overstayed her visa. It's not a criminal offense under the US legal code. That's not a criminal offense. She overstayed her visa. What does the current immigration law say for someone that overstays a J visa? And Joe's going to correct me here. He's getting ready to. He's unmuted himself here. But if it's less than a year, I think if you overstay less than a year, then you have to leave the country for 2 years. Then you can come back. If you overstay your visa by more than 2 years, you have to go out and stay for 10 years. Well, what is this woman doing? She runs a restaurant. She has employees. She pays taxes herself. She pays Social Security taxes for her employees. She's contributing to the economy. Isn't there a way for her to regularize her status There's been people that have proposed, well, maybe there's a way. You know, say, okay, you're not a citizen, but you're authorized to be here. You're not going to be deported, but if you commit to this program, so that means you have to continue to financially support the community like you're doing, pay $1,000 fine over a period of time. And then after that, there'll be a process for citizenship eventually. Maybe it'll take 10 years. But that doesn't exist right now. Gene.
Have you had any luck communicating with Indiana legislators?
Well, we've tried. I also work in solar too, and so I've gone up to meetings and spoke and things like that. And it's difficult, you know. But I think we need to do grasswork stuff. We need to get the message out to churches and say, let's stop polarizing this. All immigration is not bad. Aren't there ways to fix it? You know, so immigration should serve the needs of the community. It should help build the economy. This declining birth rate is a worrisome thing. You know, I have a series of slides that talk about cities in the Rust Belt. Remember what happened? The steel industry went to hell. A lot of factories closed. Communities kind of turned into shadows of themselves. Crime picked up. I have a series of 6 slides that talk about these cities are welcoming refugees. Why? They moved into these communities. They cleaned up. They started their own businesses, restaurants, service industries, small manufacturing concerns. And now there's mayors of cities, big cities, that are saying the single biggest factor as to why our city is now profitable is because refugees came in. People haven't heard that, but we need that to be spread. Joe, you want me to shut up and go home, or do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I'm going to pause you for a second. First, I'd like to thank you, Pete. We really appreciate you coming and sharing everything with us today. It is 1 o'clock, so if people are needing to sign off for work, you're welcome to do it. If Pete's still available and people are wanting to ask a few more questions, I'll leave it open for that to happen. But if you're needing to pop off, I know we had a couple people who had to run the meetings already. You're certainly welcome to stick around and ask additional questions. And once again, Pete, thank you very much. Very informative, wonderful topic, and thank you for coming today. And with that, we'll
Thank you for the opportunity.
And does anybody have any other questions? Joe, did you want to contribute anything there?
Only contribute a clarification on the overstay of a J1. Technically, the 2008 August 1st memo was rescinded last year. There is no unlawful status bar, the 3 or the 10-year bar connected to J1 or F1 status. You are out of status, but you don't accrue unlawful presence. Therefore, the bans don't apply. However, you couldn't adjust or change status other than adjustment of status by marriage to a U.S. citizen. In case you're wondering, just to correct the record there.
Did anybody else's eyes glaze over with all that legalese, or just me? Okay. Any other questions for Pete, or anybody else want to hear Joe talk whatever language he was just speaking?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. You know, if you want to talk more about these studies that are proposing changes, like the George Bush Presidential Library study and Cato Institute, why, that would be wonderful. So if you know, I do this presentation with some civic groups. I've done this with Kiwanis before. I just did one a couple of days ago with the Knights of Columbus, this Catholic conservative men's group, you know, so it's an interesting thing. I learned from it.
Well, thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Pete.
Thanks.